James at 16 will not be presented this evening, but will return next week at its regular time. Stay tuned now for a special 2-hour What Really Happened to the Class of 65.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Okay.
Brian Hitch, welcome back to Word Balloon. As always, great to talk to you. Very excited for this new Ultimate series that started this week. And we're recording on Tuesday, but Marvel was kind enough to give me an advanced look. And intriguing and great that you're involved. Now, you drew this first issue. Is there another artist that's going to do the majority of the series? How are the art chores going to fall out for this thing?
This is a 4-issue introductory series that sets up the new Ultimate Universe. And I've drawn all of it. Issue 1 is 40 pages, issues 2 and 3 are 31 pages, and issue 4 is 50 pages, which I'm just finishing up in the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
So they're big issues, but so far I think there's some covers coming up. So far, that's my agreed involvement in this, because that's initially what it was just that series, but I know we're discussing other things as well. So they're all taking shape at the moment. But yes, I've done all 100 and whatever it was, 960 pages, 150 pages. So
outstanding, man. No, nice. Like you said, 40-page first issue sets up a lot, leaves us on a very interesting note. Is the next issue coming out next month, or is it
it's monthly? It's monthly. Wonderful. Despite the size of the issues.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a lot faster than I was when I was drawing the original Ultimate series. So not that I mean, I'll show you when we wrap up. I'll send you a link so you can see the other issues. Certainly not stinting on scope and detail on this any more than I did the first time round. It's just I'm genuinely a lot faster than I used to be, for all manner of reasons we've talked about before. But and actually, to be honest, that was one of the appeals of doing this. When CB first came, he said, look, we're going to do a Venom relaunch, we're going to do this Ultimate Invasion thing. And back then it was a very different thing, because it was going to be 5 issues of Venom and 5 issues of Ultimate Invasion. And Invasion kept getting put back, so I stayed on Venom because I was having fun. And by that point, I was into it, and I knew the character, and I was familiar. It wasn't a new project anymore, so it was nice and easy just to stay rolling on often some quite challenging deadlines, shall we say, politely. But part of the appeal for me in doing the Ultimate Invasion thing was, can I go back to that without all the hang-ups I had the first time and all the mental health problems that accompanied that period? And can I just do it to the same scale and level of detail and then still deliver it, and do it on the same schedule pretty much as a monthly comic would be, which is 5 pages a week minimum. And yes, in fact, some weeks I've done 10 pages. It's, so my speed hasn't dropped for doing a more complicated thing. It just, some of the days are a little longer, but I still do my weekly kind of output, because that's what I'm comfortable with, and that's what I feel like is what I should be doing and what I'm comfortable with doing. So yeah, it's been an interesting project. It obviously is very different from the original version, because this is a different setup. This isn't the same whole cloth cold creation of a new universe. This is spinning out of the Marvel universe with the Maker, as we know, who's the last remnant of the original Ultimate Universe. So this is different. My relationship with Jonathan is different. My relationship with Mark, it's not the same period. I'm not the same person. It's different periods of creativity. So, it is a different project, but hopefully we've set up something that some terrific writers and artists are going to have really great time playing with for a while. And I know there's a long-term plan Jonathan's developing. So there are series. I think one of them has at least already been announced, but there's a lot more coming, and I'm definitely the cover artist on one of those. And when you hear the title, you'll know why I'm the cover artist, and that's not giving much away. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun, which is, I think, the key thing.
100%, man. And truly, I'm a layman, and we, as you said, we have discussed the fact that you have changed your style a bit to get faster, and that's great, because that's really, it seems to me that, speaking to other artists, sometimes as they get older, they're a little more concerned about the pages, and it takes longer. I know Mike Mignola is like that.
Oh yeah,
something. So that's really great, and also that you see this as an opportunity to come back to this, and you're feeling better. You've got a faster style, and that's terrific. That you're meeting the challenge and having fun.
I think it's more that I can do the same things quicker because there's a whole level of familiarity. There's been a couple of decades of me figuring out process, and it's also if I'm honest, sometimes when I look back at the Ultimates stuff, it's a little like I'm being shouted at for 22 pages. There's a little. I mean, the storytelling was always, I felt, on point. That you always knew where to look in the panel. There was more to see if you wanted to. But I think over the years I've found a more economic use for that. So I use it where necessary. Because again, if you use all the tools in the toolbox all the time, they become less and less effective. There's an interesting sequence. People will see it when they read issue 2, but there's a 6-page scene in that, which in itself it's not an exact retread, but it by nature it is a retelling of a scene in issue 2 of the original Ultimates, but with different characters and a slightly different point of view. And in the script, it was originally, you could just copy and paste in all the new material. And then I started looking at the original pages so I could get the beats right. And in the end, I just redrew them all from scratch. And it felt for me like I was correcting, like I think, well, the composition on that panel doesn't quite work, but if I did it this way, it would work better. And if I did that angle, it would work better. So the beats are the same as they were, but I feel like the version I did in Ultimate Invasion issue 2 is better drawn than the version in, but you can never recapture the originality of that original thing. It was, there's interesting challenges in that respect. I'm definitely a better artist now than I was then. I'm certainly more natural about it, and I feel a lot more comfortable about it. But at the same time, all that stuff then was being driven by this kind of raw, desperate creativity that comes with you being young. That slightly, that's still in me. I can feel it. It does come out when the project or the time is right, and there's some stuff coming up. I know it will be there. But for me, this was just about doing a really good job, on time, on schedule, and telling Jonathan's story to the best of my ability.
Had you drawn the Maker before? It's so,
No.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, and again, without spoiling beyond this first issue, are there other new characters that you'll have an opportunity to draw or even design?
From issue 2 onwards, it said, well, in fact, from the last few pages of issue 1, it's all new, because that's the new Ultimate Universe. And so although we said, there's still this idea that, the Ultimates are coming back. No, they aren't. This the cover was symbolic, where we have the Ultimates on one side and the Maker breaking through. That's the idea, is shattering. The old thing has gone, is shattering it. He's been pursued by the Illuminati, but he's going to do something new. He's going to make his own universe. So, but at the same time, what Jonathan's been able to spin out of that is a story that I think is relevant for today in the way the Ultimates was for its time, and the idea of power and legacy and power and control, is really strong in this. And I think it's going to deliver you a new kind of Avengers team, a new kind of, you'll see what happens with some of the familiar characters early on. but you see these newer versions, and all of them, for me now, are fully alive as new versions of these characters. It doesn't feel like it's an Elseworlds. This feels like it's a new universe. So yes, that you can see there's a Hulk, there may well be an Iron Man, there's other familiar characters you will see, but this is not the Ultimates, and it is not that Ultimate universe. It is completely new, and it gives us a whole new way of looking at some of these characters that's as much different from the Ultimates as the Ultimates was from the 616 at the time. So I hope people will embrace the opportunity to see something new rather than expect something that's the same, or the same as, because you can't go back and do that stuff again. It's been done. It ran its course. We've all moved on, and this isn't 2001 anymore. The pop culture is of its time. You can't recreate the circumstances that surrounded those original books, whether that's internally at Marvel, the way we were creatively, or just the world that was going on around us post 9/11. Those are all significant factors in why those books looked, well, certainly the Ultimates, why that book was the way it was. And also, that book then hugely influenced the beginnings of the cinematic universe that Marvel had, but that's also then played into comics, and the comics for the last 20 years have been, this, I do mean this all modesty, intact and all ego aside. There was a pre-Ultimates Marvel universe and a post-Ultimates Marvel universe, and a lot of the visual ideas and the scope, the scale, lots of things that we did in the Ultimates then fed back into the Marvel universe, the cinematic universe. The cinematic universe then played into the Marvel universe, and so that's the world we're in right now, 20 years on. So trying to do something a little different from those two things, it is I suppose the challenge, without deliberately going to extremes that wouldn't be interesting to anybody.
I'm curious, as far as back then, for the first one of the Ultimates, important book, and as you say, really presenting the Avengers in a different way. Was there not so much, and maybe there was interference, but I don't want to cloud this in a specific way, but was there more hands-on from Joe Quesada and Bill Jemas for that first one of the Ultimates? And if you could compare Buckley and Cebulski, or even Kevin Feige, if he had anything to say about what you guys are doing now.
In the original thing, no. When Joe Quesada called, he said, he literally called me and said, the lunatics are running the asylum. Do you want to come and join in? And they explained a little bit about the premise of the Ultimate Universe, which was that it was a new, all access, all ages model for the Marvel Universe. So anybody who'd never read a comic could pick these up and go from scratch. Would we like to do the Avengers version with Mark Miller, who'd done the Authority after Warren and I left? And they said, why don't you guys? And I know Mark had asked for me, which is what prompted the call. So Mark called me like 10 o'clock one morning, and we spoke literally all day on the phone, and we came up with so much stuff, almost none of which became part of the Ultimates book, because as we started talking, this is pre 9/11, we were still, because it was the summer at that point, and I was designing Thor and all that. But the key moment was when I had this kind of this epiphany, if you like, and I drew this really quick sketch of Captain America wearing a sleeveless flak jacket with this shield in one hand and an automatic rifle in the other, screaming, and I sent it to Mark, and he said, that is possibly the most disturbingly brilliant thing I've ever seen. And he said, and I said, but that's the thing, is that he said Captain America looks like a soldier. I said, that's the thing, he's a super soldier. People forget that. He was a wartime character in the 40s. That's what he was creating. He was fighting Hitler on the covers of magazines. I said, bring that to the modern day, and he would literally be a military man. He would be a commander. He's called a captain, but he has general rank. And then that led to the whole Nick Fury thing, especially post 9/11, when Colin Powell, the highest ranking military man in America at the time, he was the Secretary of State as well. And we said, that's who Nick Fury is. That's Nick Fury. So, but the input from Marvel, absolutely nothing. They just said, you do what you want, you get nothing from us, you can do anything you like. And what we did was certainly not an all ages book, but and we said that to Bill at the time. I remember after the first couple of issues have come out, we're over in the offices, and I said, Bill, it wasn't what you intended, was it? He said, it's no, but it's everything we hoped it could be. And look at the sales on this thing. This is huge. We had then outsold Jim Lee's first issue of Hush as well. So and actually with the issue 1 of Hush, and I think issue 1 of Ultimates was the year's best-selling book over Hush. You have to check on that. I'm not 100% sure. I remember, that's a vague memory from the time. Mark loves to keep track of this stuff. I generally goes in my head. But at the time, no, we were just free to go and do literally what the fuck we liked. They said we could kill people, we could kill familiar characters and replace them with others, because this wasn't the other universe. It was
right.
But behind the scenes on this, I don't know really, because I had a couple of chats with Jonathan just in the inception period in which he was trying to figure out the story he wanted to tell. And behind the scenes, I don't know. You have to. That's a question for Jonathan, because I'm just not involved in the story with this the way I was when Mark and I were doing the Ultimates. It was a very different creative process. It's a derogatory term, and I don't mean it to be, but I'm pretty much the art robot on this one. It's I'm not involved in the plot, though. They've given me an awful lot of additional pages per issue. So, issue 1, I think Jonathan wrote a 34-page story, so I had 6 extra pages to play with.
Wow.
Issues 2 and 3, I think issue 3, I think the script for that was about 20-something pages, because it was a heavily character-led, story-driven, dialogue-heavy. There's no action in issue 3 at all. It's all character work. But I actually expanded that up to 31 pages again. I was never supposed to go over 30, but issue 2 and issue 3 both got an additional page, and I just didn't tell them. I just turned it in. But part of that was, in regular monthly comics, you're constantly fighting against the lack of landscape you have to deal with things visually, both as a writer and as an artist. And the writer is always primarily going to be focused with getting all the story in that he wants. And occasionally they'll write big panel, characters fight, but that sometimes could be panel 1 of 5 on a page. And in a team book, and some of the stuff that we're trying to show on some of this, it needs scope. So it was a little bit of a condition of mine going in that I'd have, some additional landscape to play with. Which has been terrific, actually, because it just means that, and on that, as I say, that dialogue heavy, and I don't mean by that there's shitloads of balloons to read, because in fact, I turned one balloon from what was going to be a 6-panel page into a massive wide shot across a double-page spread, because it needed the landscape for you to get the moment of that dialogue. You don't normally get the chance to do that, where you can give the pictures the space the dialogue is asking for. And that's not by volume of dialogue, it's by what's being said, and then what you want to show to back that line of dialogue or those word balloons up. So having the chance to do that, I suppose, has given me that, additional non-art robot-y type of thing. I'm not just, there's an interpretation to what Jonathan's script is. And actually in issue 4, he's written this huge midsection thing as just plot style, because he wants me to do the action the way that I do, because, as he pointed out, I did that anyway in issues 1 and 2, whether he wrote it tightly or not. I just kind of did it my own way. But that's because I take the points of direction, and then the visuals coming in the head. It's not I'm trying to draw what I want. I'm trying to draw what he's writing, but I'm trying to draw it the best way I can see, not the way he's seeing it, because I'm not in his head. So I take the information and then try and direct it, if you like. So again, having the landscape to do that has been terrific. So they've kind of relaunched that particular part of me a bit, because there was a discussion about, another project to start afterwards. And I said, yeah, but I want extra pages. So
good. Yeah, honestly, this is thrilling to see you guys together. I've always appreciated Jonathan's work, going back to Nightly News, his first creator-owned thing. That was when I was first talking to him and aware of him. I really like his graphic headers that he puts in as almost like chapters
You know,
in
they're in
books.
this too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up. Does he handle that? Do
Yeah,
you?
I think he's
Okay.
doing it. I mean, because a couple of them have been in the scripts and then they showed up in the lettering thing, but I'm pretty sure Jonathan's doing them. Yeah, I mean, he and I have been talking about working together on and off for about 15 years. Um, I mean, there was all sorts of. I mean, they never amounted to anything because we never. He was either under I was at DC and he was at Marvel, and then there was a point he wasn't going to be at Marvel. I said, let's go and relaunch Legion of Superheroes together, and it's like, yeah, perfect. And then he
Wow.
re-signed with Marvel, and then Bendis did Legion of Superheroes
Right.
about a year and a half later. So we've had these kind of conversations. Wouldn't it be cool if we did? We were going to do the X-Men together very briefly a little while ago. That was one of the things CB floated. And then he changed his mind about what he was going to do with the X-Men, or Marvel did, and then he left that book. So there's been a number of times where we've kind of had the "wouldn't it be cool if" conversation. So I mean, actually, Ultimate Invasion was originally going to be with another writer, and then that writer left the project. I stayed with it and went, because they said Jonathan's going to do it. It won't be the same project; it'll be a completely new thing. But Jonathan's going to come. We'll keep the title, but Jonathan's going to put something new. Are you in? I said, well, yeah, technically, yeah, because I wanted to work together for a while, so I don't see any reason why I wouldn't want to stay with it. So it's nice that we've got to do it together finally, at least.
Agreed. And yeah, I was surprised because I know Jonathan is thriving with his Substack comics. And has he approached you at all to do any variant covers or anything for what he's doing over there?
No, actually, he hasn't. But that's not unexpected. I know my rates are fairly high. One of the fortunate ones. It does kind of price me out of an awful lot of the marketplaces, though, for things like variants, especially on creator-owned projects, because it's coming out of. And some of those times I've done stuff free for friends from time to time, because you like to support friends and colleagues where you can, but
Sure.
Sometimes the big commercial ventures, they don't want to spend the money, and they're rightly so, because what else, it won't bring an equivalent return, I don't think, for the expenditure. And there's an honesty with that. You have to be, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a commercial field and we're all trying to earn a living. So
Absolutely, man, 100%. I got to bring up regarding Ultimate Invasion. I love that once again you're playing in Chicago. As
yeah,
the original run of the Ultimates. So it's great to see the maker stuck in Chicago at the beginning of the story, and the fallout that happens as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, as you know, Brian, I mean, a lot of some of the locales of the original Ultimates run, like the Red Lion, that wonderful fight was a Cap and Giant Man in front of
Yeah,
the
that
Red
was, and that you can thank Paul Mounts for that, because I was always trying to land stuff in the real world, so that was stuff Mark didn't really kind of take much. So Mark would just put like Giant Man, Hank's in a bar,
Sure.
and everything was always New York, so I just wanted a different city. And I remember Paul Mounts lived in Chicago, so I said, hey Paul,
Right.
get me some reference, go and shoot me a bar, so he did, so that's why it was, because he said, oh, this is my mate owns this place, this is where I go drinking, so it would be a hoot. So that was great for me. I love that was what gave, I think, the original Ultimates a level of veracity, was because nobody had done real world like that. But to me, that was always Marvel, though. DC is like Game of Thrones. It exists in a fantasy land. It's Metropolis and Gotham and Central City, and every Marvel comic was always New York. So you could imagine the reality of New York with these characters in it, and that's what I always loved about that. So to me, it felt like real Marvel to do super people in a real world setting.
I like the idea that the Illuminati is chasing the maker and what he's doing. Man, that ending, holy cow.
I love drawing that what is it, that 4 pages at the end you're talking about. That because that's actually the first time I've drawn those characters like that.
Okay.
I mean, it isn't that I hadn't drawn that character, and I've done covers for that book, and things like that, which is fun. But to do that version, the young, and just try and access, that kind of aspect of it was just, and that object the maker took is not going anywhere, right? There's going to be a purpose for that. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. No, it's exciting. And my thoughts go back to that the original 616 Marvel scene that happened decades ago, and then your take on it in this Ultimate Universe, and a butterfly effect. If that's not spoiling too much.
No, that's right. That was the point of it. I mean, everybody was saying, look at the original version of that, and I did, but at the same time it had to be a modern thing with its own modern take and setting and so on. But where Jonathan wrote it being, it just that setting, that was my favorite, actually my favorite scene in the entire issue. Drawing that, I just loved drawing that scene, and I thought, I could do a whole series like this, maybe even 150 issues, but we haven't had that conversation.
I understand. And there's an interaction with another former Ultimate Universe member, and it's easy to connect the dots. I mean, we're talking, and I'm releasing this the day the book came out, so I'm taking your lead in terms of how much we want to spoil as far as the story goes, but it's great. And I don't know. I mean, the maker, Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe, has always been, a great psychotic character, frankly, better than, and it's funny because I don't know if Scott Snyder had this in mind when he created the various Apex Batman, the
Joker, the Batman Who Laughs,
exactly.
I've never connected that, but actually including the visor and stuff. But my assumption with that was always a kind of, that was influenced by Judge Death from the old 2000 AD,
sure,
Bolland stuff. So that was my connection with that. It never occurred to me that the maker might have been part of it too. Possible.
I don't know.
Who knows what Scott Snyder reads in the bathroom?
I understand. Did you read Jonathan's X-Men magnum opus and everything, or were you?
No, I genuinely don't get a chance to read comics these days. My kids read them, especially my 16-year-old Ted just finished his exams this week, and I said, okay, what do you want, as your kind of well done present? And he gave me a graphic novel list. So
outstanding.
So he wants Court of Owls, because he hasn't read that yet, and he wants the Supergirl that Tom King just did with Bic Selby.
Yes. Oh my God.
And what was the other one? Hang on a minute, I'm gonna have a look.
No worries. Yeah, by all means.
Because he just adores comics and graphic novels. Oh, the Sinestro Corps War.
Oh, fun.
So he just loves it completely. Where was I going with this? I've completely lost my train of thought now. What did you originally ask me?
I was asking if you had seen Hickman's X-Men run.
Oh, no.
By your sons, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have. Ted may have read it. I haven't had a chance. Just because I suppose there's limited time in the day, honestly, outside of drawing comics for a lot of the day, and I listen to audiobooks while I work most of the time. So, by the time we get to knock-off time, I just want to go eat a nice dinner and sit on the sofa with Mrs. H, and we just, lately it's been the Silo. We've been watching the Silo this week. So
I'm hearing great things about it. I haven't watched it yet. Did you watch The Diplomat?
Yeah, that we inhaled that one over about 2 nights.
Me too. That was so good.
And The Recruit as well. That was another good one.
I'm gonna have to watch The Recruit. That's good to hear, man. Well, are you we've got a cluster of superhero movies that are in the theaters. Have you had a chance to see any of those with your sons?
I missed the Spider-Verse evening because unfortunately they went on a Friday because it was a school holiday. So they went on a Friday. and they all loved it. They loved that, and I missed that. But I think Ted will want to go and see it again, so we'll probably go and see it at some point in the next week or two. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. We saw Flash at the weekend.
Thoughts?
It's a good story, and actually it was a strong character arc for Barry. It was a really good character arc for Barry, actually. And I kind of, Michael Keaton as well finally got to properly be Batman. Yeah, so I think it was a strong story, good character work, and when you look at it, it's really a very small cast list, because there's really only about 6 people in the entire movie, apart from all those kind of odd cameos. But I like the movie for the movie. I thought, if I'm honest, I thought some of the effects work was pretty substandard. Some of the CGI, it was like, some of it was just like poor video game footage, honestly, at times. And this is, I'm going to be slightly critical here a little bit, is that when you're dealing with like multiple characters in frame and multiple motion of characters in frame, there's just, often I think there's the way this stuff is looked at is there's a very kind of broad, wide angle to it. Lots of people, tiny people moving around in shot. The big action sequence, I found myself not enjoying it. I love the character work in the movie. I thought all of that was good, and the direction on those scenes was terrific. But the really big action sequence, which everybody knows is the General Zod battle, that seemed just like a poor video game, and it didn't seem, the visuals on it were particularly well worked out in the way the characters moved, the way it was just tiny little figures being shot at and being hit, and you never really got in the scene, for me, in the scene, in the moments. But outside of that, I liked it a lot. But the big budget battle scene, I'm not even convinced, even some of the close-ups of Ezra Miller in some of those shots were real. I think some of those were CG with voiceovers, because the faces were so unreal at times. But
Well, that's interesting, and it's funny. I yesterday read a Variety article questioning, are we at an oversaturation point with comic book films? And it's
bad ones, yeah.
Well, what did you say? Say it again.
I think bad ones, yeah.
Well, that exactly, and that, Brian, that was the point of the article. Is you want to fix this? Make a compelling,
make better movies, yeah.
And yes, I think there is a sameness in a lot of these action act threes that we are getting bored. I mean, Brian, I haven't seen one of the superhero films in the theaters since Black Adam, because he was one of my favorite characters. Really looked forward to it. Found myself bored in Act 3.
It was a terrible movie.
I liked it slightly better, because I'll admit I'm a sucker for Black Adam stories.
But that wasn't Black Adam. That was The Rock.
You're right. You are right.
That was Dwayne Johnson. Yeah. And that wasn't Black Adam.
You're right. No, I agree with you there. But yeah,
the best thing in that movie, actually, I thought, was Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate.
So
every scene he was in.
Absolutely. And much like the Reverse Flash and the way they played him in the CW show, and just in general, even in the comics, I'm like, wow, there's an opportunity for Pierce to come back in different points in time prior to the events of Black Adam, so he can still be Dr. Fate. Yeah. And I'm like, God, please, like, James Gunn, if you're listening, I really would like to see more of Pierce's Dr. Fate. I thought he was amazing.
I'd see a whole movie or a whole Max TV show with Brosnan's Fate, because I think there's huge stories you can tell. And you're right, because that guy's been old since ancient Egypt. You could get away with it,
Yeah, different points in time. But yeah, this is a serious thing that I really hope Gunn and the Marvel producers and directors are really considering, in terms of, there is a sameness that is, and especially given how much they lean on action in Act 3, that is, making this stuff kind of ordinary and boring. And I think superhero movies will be with us no matter what. I liken it to the Western, and the Western had its giant period, and it sort of went away, but not really. and thankfully, or when it did go away, it was a very brief period. And I know in the mid '80s they came back with Silverado, and all of a sudden the Western was viable again.
The
Not to the
problem,
extent of previous.
the problem now is that these third act spectacles, they don't mean anything. The third act of Endgame was earned. Every single second of that was earned, and it was earned
Agreed.
over 10 years. All the action in Winter Soldier, which for me I think is possibly the best made I think that might be my favorite Marvel movie.
Mine too.
I think it's virtually flawless start to finish, that one. Not a wasted second, a wasted moment. The action is perfect for the characters. It completely centers Captain America as the character he later became. Not that he, I love the character from the first Avenger, but the action was never really Captain America action. Whereas, Winter Soldier was just a whole different level. And I think it's a brilliant, brilliant movie. But again, the third act in that, it's pure. The third act is character. It's not all action. And I think that's really the problem. You get something like I loved Ant-Man 2. I thought the second Ant-Man, I love the first one as well, but I think the second Ant-Man movie again is a near perfect movie, start to finish. It's just great fun. It's not about saving the world. It's not about saving the universe. It's just about saving your friends and family effectively, and then in Quantumania, they go bananas with it. And it's a beautiful looking movie. The design in it's terrific, but it's boring. And they take out two of the most interesting, all those support characters of Scott's, which are just part of his family too. It's missing them as well.
Agreed.
I like the Cassie arc a lot. I like the Cassie Scott arc. And I like the personal arcs of all the characters in that. But you have to say, if they're building Kang up to be the next big character, the next Thanos, well, he's been beaten twice, once by Loki's female half and once by Ant-Man. Well, Wasp, actually, so how, that's a bit of a story dodge, isn't it?
I agree. And truly, given the middling acceptance of this current period of Marvel phase 4, I suppose, still, it's interesting. And you're right, plus all the problems that Mayberry's having. Although I think if they decided ultimately to recast Mayberry or Marbury, and if I'm getting his name wrong, I apologize, or Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors. Yeah, I'm thinking of the writer, Jonathan Marbury or Mayberry. But Jonathan Majors, obviously it's Kang, so Kang can, as he did in being Ramatut and the Immortus and the Iron Lad and the other thing, you could bring in another actor to still be Kang and not worry about that. But I agree with you in terms of Thanos really was this impenetrable big bad that they released until the last 2 movies.
And actually, when Thanos first fully appeared as the villain, he won. He beat
Absolutely.
the Avengers.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm hearing that they would likely do the 2-movie thing whenever they get to this conflict with Kang as well.
But he's already been beaten by Ant-Man beat him on his own.
You're not wrong. No, you're right. And then the female Loki. Absolutely. That's crazy, man.
Actually, I kind of think the multiverse thing, I mean, it's because it's everywhere at the moment anyway. It was in the TV shows, it's in all the movies. I just think, it was a 2-year thing. It was if you're going to do multiverse, do it, either do it as the big event thing, build up to it, make it the 2 Avengers movies, move on, but it's just this permeating thing over years. I think it's boring.
Yeah. I agree with you, man.
I say that as a man who's just drawn an alternative universe story. No,
but you're right, man. Well, I mean, we're going to get to a longer conversation about Star Trek, but they keep going to the Conwell over and over again. They keep going to the Borg over and over again. They keep going to time travel over and over again. And it's like, really, they spread it out better when they had more episodes each season, but even further, that I think they were a little more aware of, well, in some cases, like Voyager overused the Borg, certainly. I know. And you rolled your eyes as well when I said that. but yeah, I don't know. Again, we need something different. We need to be surprised, and I really think the onus obviously is on both companies to give us less sameness and more ingenuity.
I mean, my hope is that, with once we really kick off with the gun stuff, which, the first movie is Superman, despite the
Right.
fact Blue Beetle is coming, and
Right.
Aquaman is coming, Creature Commandos, I know, is their first TV series, but Superman Legacy is the first new DCU movie, and it's a brave one to start with, because Superman is not an obvious box office, and he doesn't sell comics either. Batman
Right.
is the box office star, but then it makes sense, since you've got the Pattinson Matt Reeves stuff going on in the Elseworlds verse now. So doing another Batman movie to kick it off doesn't make sense. But you're kind of right to start, if you're talking creatively only. Starting with Superman makes a great deal of sense. But honestly, if Gunn can stick the landing on that tonally and nail that Superman, I have high hopes for what comes after, which obviously includes the Authority, and I think
Yes.
there'll clearly be a Justice League movie at some point. There's going to be, we know Andy Muschietti's now doing The Brave and the Bold, and that's terrific. Especially based on what he did with Batman in that. It's so different from the Matt Reeves and the Nolan stuff. It's Batman doing batshit crazy stuff. Love it. It's great. I mean, just good movies, good character movies. Yes, action, big scale, big ideas, but it's got to be character led always.
Agreed.
And actually, that's
Agreed.
the thing that does work about The Flash. Everything that happens to it happens because of choices characters make. Every single thing, and that's terrific. As I said, I can moan and bitch about visuals and animation and all that stuff, but I don't want to take away how well they nailed the story in The Flash. I think they did. I think it was really well put together, and they got so much into it with great economy in a way that anybody could understand, and that's the universal appeal of a good story, isn't it?
Agreed. I'm seeing it tonight, and
I'm sorry to have spoiled it for you.
Not at all. Oh, not at all. No, honestly, Brian, every article, I've learned little nuggets here and there from various things, and I'm still excited to see it, or curious, I should say. I have to admit, I'm not, and even prior to their problems that have been so public, I got to admit, I'm not a big Ezra Miller Flash fan, especially compared to Grant Gustin, who I really gave a level of natural humanity and just a genial kind of guy. I didn't find him funny in the Snyder movies. I really didn't.
No, but then there was nothing funny in the Snyder movies, so.
Well, that's exactly, man. Yes, the dour nature of the Snyder.
Joyless. Yeah.
Jesus, man. Yeah, I know. $10.
Humanity, even.
Well, how about sunlight? How about like a nice bright sunny day? Is that fun? No, better not.
No, I'm gonna get shit on Twitter for this one.
Please, good Lord. Yeah, whatever. The Snyder people don't scare me, and they're a little too obsessive. But whatever. And again, like what you like, it's okay. Well, it's interesting because Franco from Art and Franco and Tiny Titans suggested, because I haven't seen all three of them, he's like, see Flash first, then see the Guardians movie, save Spider-Verse for last. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I trust Franco's taste. I mean, we have similar tastes. But
I liked Guardians 3. It hit all the right emotional beats, and the Adam Warlock stuff. You can see, is this James Gunn thinking about how to do Superman? Some of it visually.
Interesting.
Right?
Oh, interesting.
I think okay. There's
wow.
I think Superman for me is an interesting one, because it's not just nailing the tonal nature of it, but there's a kind of there's a physicality to it. I think I want to see as well, in the way the shots are framed and the way the physicality of the characters framed. To be fair to Snyder, some of Man of Steel came close to it. The idea of ballistic flying, where you're gonna the takeoffs and the flying is going to be at such speed, that it will be. But then they also didn't give you any of the really, that wonderful kind of beauty shots of Christopher Reeve landing or taking off. The getting the cat out the tree that Christopher Reeve did. Just the fact that you could do it with wires in camera and all of that material. I think that's still missing, because it's so much easier to just have the figure in pose and then cut to CG shot off, then landing hard. That has its moment, especially in a big action shot, because they even did that in in Superman,
Batman Superman.
No, what was the one that Brandon Routh was in?
Oh, Superman Returns,
that was it. I knew it began with R.
Bryan Singer's film. Sure.
Yeah, so like when he lands on the Kryptonite island, you do that ballistic landing, and it was the first time anybody had done that. Actually, no, I think Hancock might have done it first.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, because actually, if I have my issues with the Hancock story and the tonal shift, things like that, but visually, it was way the fuck ahead of the curve. The real world, the way that the physicality of the powers was shown, like like when Charlize Theron's character is first revealed to be superpowered too, and it's an intimate moment. Then she bangs him into the fridge and chucks him out the wall with the fridge and him tumbling down the street. And you think, that's superpowers. That's what it would be like, And Man of Steel went further with it, but all of those visuals and the ballistic flying and all of that, it was done first in Hancock.
I agree, and really, Snyder has a lot of great money shots that evoke moments in the comics. And I mean, so it was never a problem with his visuals.
No, not at all.
Story and character.
But again, and again, Snyder, the way he'll take a moment, the way he'll frame it, the way he'll shoot it, multiple shot, no single camera, so it's resets each time. But the way he can think visually around the scene is beautiful. No doubting that ability, but I mean, Superman, Man of Steel was almost, for me, a great Superman film. It just wasn't, because the character of Superman wasn't really in it, and Clark wasn't really in it, and and by the time they were, the film was over. And I know there's a coming to that point, but the journey didn't make particular sense to me. And frankly, apart from the pleasure in his first flight, that the character was joyless, and that's not Superman.
Well, when he comes back after learning about Jor-El and his Kryptonian background, and he goes to see Martha, and he's like, "Mom, I know who I am. I know everything about myself. That's great." And then she starts crying, and it's like, good Lord. I mean, this guy cannot get a break. Or also, well, the S isn't really an S, it stands for hope. Well, there's no evidence of that so far in this movie, but okay, if you say so, Clark, I suppose.
I have no problem with the casting in that film at all. I thought they were all terrific, and Cavill, I think,
great
deserved.
Superman.
Yes. He was
deserved better. Deserved better scripts.
But then so did Brandon Routh. I think he could have been
100%.
I mean, he did one movie called Superman Adventures in Lifting, and that was pretty much.
I know. Yeah, outside of when Kevin Spacey stabs him with the kryptonite,
which is horrible.
Whoa, you see, but I got to be honest, Brian. I was like, wow, because
but that wasn't the tone of the rest of the movie, and not one you're taking your kids to.
That's fair. That's fair.
See, that was uneven too. And the thing is, to be honest, the first Superman movie, there's no fighting at all in the first Superman movie. He does a lot of lifting as well, but there's something about the third act of that isn't fighting at all. It's saving from natural disasters.
Yes,
because there's nobody to hit and punch. It's just Superman, showing this, and the turning. I know the turning back the world was originally intended for the end of the second film, so there's kind of story adjustments, kind of there in terms of how the movie ended, but because of what they'd shot and the footage they had, and some choices they had to make when they had to do what they did to get the movie actually in the cinemas at times. But still, I know the effects aren't comparable to today, but bloody hell, that movie still holds up, because the character, the heart, and honestly, an absolutely astonishing performance from Christopher Reeve in that movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, who are you? A
And
friend.
Margot Kidder too, that energy and
Oh yeah, the chemistry was amazing. Yeah. And you're right. They reshowed it. I don't know if you get Turner Classic Movies in the UK, but for Warner Brothers 100th anniversary this year, they showed for a month nothing but Warner Brother films on TCM, and in one night they showed both the 78 Superman movie and the 89 Batman movie.
Right.
And
Interesting.
they both, for different reasons, hold up in different ways. I mean, Burton's weirdness of Gotham and everything, it fit that movie. But you're right, the Donner Superman movie, no, it's perfect, and it really still works. And really, there's something too about practical special effects versus CGI. I heard, and maybe it was a rerun of a podcast, but they were talking about the original King Kong, and even though it's this little stop motion puppet that they manipulate to move and everything, when Kong moves that puppet, the fur gets ruffled, and the reason why it gets ruffled is because the creators are putting their hands on the actual puppet, and so you get this kind of after effect of, even though it's a stop motion thing, his fur moves, which feels more natural. And then you compare it to Kong of Skull Island or King Kong versus Godzilla, and certainly the effects are impressive, but they kind of become wallpaper. Bendis and I were watching either the first or second Pacific Rim movie when I was staying with them, and I was barely paying attention. He's like, "Don't you want to watch it?" I'm like, "I've seen it, Brian." He goes, "Yeah, but like typical nerd movie. We see him a million times." I'm like, I'm not connecting with these movies, and I think it is the CGI and the lack of deep characterization and deep story. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you're not connecting, if these aren't characters you're desperate to see what happens to, well, fight, that's I was talking to you before about watching The Silo, that from like episode 1, you caring about these characters, and some of them don't last a whole episode, and you think back in the early days, that's what Game of Thrones was like. You had no idea what was going to happen next, and we were sitting there discussing, normally it's like, oh, well, this is going to happen, A, B, C, and D. But it just keeps guessing. It keeps you guessing. I've resisted looking at what the original novels were, because I want to find out as this story unfolds, and just that kind of story that you get deep into because of the characters, and you care about them, and you care about what's happening to them, whatever scenario you're in. That's the nature of drama. And if that's not there, then it's empty spectacle. It's always empty spectacle after that, isn't it? And so many superheroes movies have become that. Just empty spectacle. Black Adam was one. There was just no there was nothing beyond a couple of characters. I said, Brosnan's Fate I liked. I would have certainly seen more of Hodges' Hawkman if they could figure out just how powerful he was consistently.
Understood. I liked it. I appreciated it. I thought the choices for Hawkman, for the most part, were interesting. I really loved Henry Winkler's little cameo as Al Pratt.
Yeah.
Don't you ruin that suit. That's a vintage suit.
That also proved, I think, that Hawkman can work visually on the screen, and beautifully too at that. But the story was supposed to be about Black Adam, and I actually didn't give a shit about him. So
I'm hip. No, I get it, man. It's funny. All right. Well, as I said, we're going to talk about Star Trek. We must.
Okay.
So Strange New World's first episode out. Yes. I got to be honest, Brian. I reviewed it as we're recording this. I reviewed it on Monday night with my usual go-to guys that watch these shows with me. First of all, I was very disappointed that Anson Mount had such a small part. It's the first episode back. Can you imagine starting a season of Next Generation and Patrick Stewart being in an episode?
But the thing is, for me, that shows how confident they are in the rest of the cast. Because actually, from season 1, by episode 1, I knew more about every member of the cast of that show than I knew about Discovery Crew 3 seasons in.
100%.
And it's not that I didn't like Discovery. I thought season 2 actually was terrific. But again, it was elevated by Anson Mount's Pike. The minute he stepped on the transporter pad, that show was stolen, by Mount. You could just see that guy's going to have you could see it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
for me, so this was like we've done all the setup. You know who everybody is. The fact that the ship is more than about this show is more than about the captain. This is what I like about this, is because yes, there is continuity through stories and every episode is different, but the continuity is the characters and their developments and what they go through. And the fact they put Spock front and center in that was just terrific, because I love where they've got Spock now, where
Really? Go on.
he's released his emotions and he's got to be that original Leonard Nimoy Cage interpretation of Spock, which is emotional and unrefined. So we know we've got seasons of Spock getting more and more emotional before he becomes, and obviously we're going to see Kirk this season and his friendship with Spock begin to develop, and that's going to be interesting for all of us fans.
I hope so, because I got to be honest, and no disrespect to Paul Wesley, who I liked enough in the Vampire Diaries. He just doesn't, and maybe this season will be better, because I wasn't crazy about Ethan Peck in Discovery or those short treks.
Yeah.
But I have to say, Strange New World made me a believer in that. No, he gets it, and I think has tempered his performance a bit more than those initial appearances on Discovery and the short treks.
I think he's probably got more confident about who Spock is to him, rather than trying to be Leonard Nimoy or Zachary Quinto. I actually find him more Spock than Quinto. Quinto looked Spock.
Absolutely.
But I never bought him as Spock.
No, neither did I.
But I wish Ethan Peck could do the eyebrow. He can't do the eyebrow. I mean, clearly he can't do the eyebrow, because on that zoom in, you might want the ship to go. That's you tried to get the eyebrow up there, but it really would not rise to the occasion. We all get performance anxiety. Sometimes it just doesn't go up. But
maybe you need some mascara or eyebrow pencil to kind of define him a little heavier or whatever.
I think a little CGI in that might have helped.
I got to be honest though. What's your thing? I did not find it funny. I found it hacky, frankly.
Yeah.
And it's also too self-aware. And I think a lot of the humor on the show is too self-aware. And, I can't help it, Brian. I've been watching Star Trek since I was 5 years old. It's, I always describe it like a grandmother describing soap operas. They're my stories. Don't fuck with my stories, man. And I'm okay. I'm over the canon thing. I mean, they trample on canon. As we know, Galileo 7 was Spock's first command in the original series. Now it's this mission. I just think they and also they take what was extraordinary and an interesting wrinkle in previous iterations of Star Trek, and they make it common. When Scotty put himself in the transporter beam to survive 70 years, that's like, wow, that is such a Scotty move and so interesting. And then they replay it on Discovery, and to survive a bad storm, everybody goes in the transporter. And it's like, okay. And now we have in this first episode, they're stealing the Enterprise. And it's like, first of all, that's a big deal. In fact, it was such a big deal. They busted Kirk from Admiral back to Captain.
I know.
As much as he saved everything. And I found that so weak with Admiral April. Oh, don't do it again. Bad Spock, bad Spock.
Actually, I think a better scene would have been Spock having to fight verbally with April to prove that he's right about this, that this needs to be done.
I agree.
And April trusting Spock to do it.
I agree.
Even if it finishes with a, your captain's going to be pissed if you don't bring the ship back whole. Don't break the ship.
Yeah.
Or even just one scene where, he says to, he contacts Pike and says, "I need to do this. You're not there. You can't come back. We need to do this." And he said, "You've got my backing. You've got to convince April." And then you have that scene. Yes, the stealing was, the heist thing was I thought an unnecessary hoop to jump through. And like you, I found that what's your thing in the chair. I think that scene was one question, one answer long only. That's all it needed to be. And that's all he needed. She needed to ask it. He needed to say it. It didn't need to be a whole 2-minute scene, because that's not Spock.
Agreed. No, and if anything, I get wanting to show Spock's journey from being more emotional to the Spock we know in the original series. And technically, you're right. They're right. There's time to explore that, I suppose. But
Yeah,
much
another
like
5 years.
but much like Quinto showing his emotions, I really feel like when you show Spock this way, Spock disappears, and now he's just another person. And I don't know. Again, it's as I've said about other story plots where we know where it's going. Yeah, but you got to appreciate the journey of getting to where we know where it's going. I don't know. I disagree with this. It's happening. Nothing I can do about it. I don't buy it as being a Spock issue. I would think Vulcans would. I love Yesteryear, and even in the JJ first movie when we see Child Spock really dealing with his emotions and having to deal with people teasing him that he's half human and all that. But I would think that maturity would come even to a half human Vulcan earlier than his being on the Enterprise. But that's
technically I suppose they'd already done that arc in Discovery season 2 anyway.
Yes.
and this must, by nature of what we saw in Discovery season 2, take place after the Cage by some years, possibly a couple of years, maybe.
Probably
So,
at least one.
So given what happened in Discovery season 2, I would have been quite comfortable with his journey through logic in this and becoming less emotional rather than more emotional. But at the end of the day, this is also a show for the broad spectrum audience as much as possible, and not just the fans. And it's also
right.
It looks amazing. It's shitloads of fun.
There's nothing wrong with the visuals. Absolutely no. And I'm even there are real purists that are like, yeah, come on, the TOS Enterprise look nothing like this. The only objection I have are the ridiculous turbo lifts that are like Swiss cable cars, going from mountain to mountain.
Well, unfortunately, not in this seat, not in Strange New World, just in Discovery. I don't know where the fuck they're going in Discovery, but
whatever. Again,
where's all empty space in Discovery? It's like the size of a Star Destroyer.
It's insane. Absolutely, it is absolutely insane. And it's like, no, man, submarines. You got to be efficient with your space. You don't have a lot of space because it's a big goddamn spaceship. But you got, a couple hundred people on there. I don't know. Good Lord, Pike's quarters.
I know.
And I'll even cut them slack that maybe it's a holographic fireplace. But I'm like, really? You got an open flame in a spaceship? I just, Brian, I know where these writers are coming from in both Discovery and Strange New Worlds. They don't have heavy science fiction backgrounds. And it shows. And it's disappointing that there's not more meat on the bone as far as debatable subjects on New Trek as there were on Rick Berman Trek and TOS.
Okay, well, you wait till you see episode 2, then I think you might change your mind.
How much have you already seen? Did you see the first?
Just the first two. Just the first two.
Oh, okay.
But see episode 2. It's a classic Trek episode.
Is that the trial? Is this what we're getting?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and Brian, forgive me, but my fear is that we're going to see a very strong argument on why genetic manipulation is okay from the Una standpoint and her defense standpoint. And I would like to see a balanced presentation of this is why eugenics are frowned upon by Starfleet and the Federation, because as we know, the original writers came from World War II, and it wasn't an LGBTQ parable. It was, you're creating a race of supermen like the Nazis did. We don't need that in our society. That's a legitimate argument. And I fear, and I understand and respect the members of the LGBTQ community that see parables of, well, you're against others, we're others too, you got a problem with us. And I again, art is subjective, but I really think I hope there is a measured, balanced discussion rather than shame on you, Federation, you're wrong, and we all know you're wrong, and I mean, whatever. But again, I don't want you to spoil, but that's my fear.
I'm going to stay quiet then. You
all right.
Watch it on Thursday and see what you think.
Indeed. I'll see if I'm yelling it from my porch at clouds like the Simpsons, like Abe Simpson. We'll see. How about Doctor Who? We haven't talked about what they're planning for November. And
because I probably know more than you do, but I cannot
okay,
say
no, it's
anything.
okay. It's all right.
It's only because I know a few people who are involved in it, so
Yeah,
and know people who know people. So because there's a few of us that have all been involved in the show, and whether writer, producer,
yes.
or in my case, consultant and whatnot. But so we've all had conversations, and we've had
All right.
an odd chat with Russell about things. So there's things we know, but I can't say. But I'm so looking forward to it. It just feels genuinely, even though it shouldn't feel fresh because we've got David Tennant and Catherine Tate back, and that's
Sure.
like go backwards. But somehow this feels like a really fresh, like a palate cleanser before we get the really new stuff.
Yeah, the new guy. No, I'm psyched for the new guy. I really feel
we've got three David and Donna, Dr. Donna specials in November. Then we've got the Christmas special, and I think Shooty Gat was going to start appearing through those. I think the Christmas special might be his first one. I'm not 100% sure, but and then the new season I think starts in March. But we're all looking forward to it. I think it'll just be a lot of fun, and the stories will make sense again, which will be great.
Understood. And I honestly, not to hammer, because I really think the fault lies with Chris Chibnall, and I don't mean that in a personal way, because I've liked a lot of non-Doctor Who stuff that he's done, including Life on Mars and other shows.
Absolutely. Life on Mars was absolutely astounding. It was brilliant.
Love it. Truly.
That was Matthew Graham as much as anything. So,
yes.
Can you believe it? They turned down a third series recently
Of Life on Mars.
Yeah, Matthew Graham had a third to make it a trilogy. So Life on Mars, Ashes to Ashes, and he had a third one was going to bring Glennis's and John Sims characters back.
Wow.
And he had this whole thing which was going to bring the whole thing to a conclusion, be this big redemptive story. And the BBC said, no, we're not interested. It's like, what?
Oh my God. Oh, it was so, and I loved Ashes to Ashes.
So did I.
Keely Hawes, I'm watching the Durrell Corfu just for her, because I love her so much.
Yeah, but can you believe that they, considering how brilliant, those series were, and how much, they are, critically successful, and how influential I think they were too, that the third season was turned down, and that's recent too, apparently.
God, no, and Sim and who was the
Glenister?
I'm glad. Oh, my God, he's so good.
I know. Yeah, Philip Glenister. Yeah, so they were, the two of them were up for this third season, which would have been another, like to end, make the whole thing a trilogy and end the whole story. Yeah.
Oh well.
I mean, I'd watch anything with John Simmon anyway. I think the man's terrific.
I'm so with you. I love John Sim. John, man, he remarkable master during the Tenet years. Well.
We were standing in a queue for a toilet break at Matthew Vaughan. This is ridiculous. Okay, so
no, do it.
so we were both at this party at Matthew Vaughan's house, and certain toilets for public use, including one, up on the half landing in Matthew Vaughan's. Anyway, so I'm just waiting to go in. Jeremy Clarkson was currently in the toilet, and I'm trying to turn around and John Sims standing there, and I thought, what the hell? So I introduced myself, said, hi, I'm Brian, and he said, I'm John. I said, I know, and I said, you probably don't know, but I worked on Doctor Who as well. I worked with Russell on the first season. I designed the TARDIS, and it's like, suddenly he's like, he's chatty because he like, so you've got somebody in common. He said, I know your work, I destroyed your set, and it was just that we had this really terrific chat about Doctor Who and how much he loved it, and how much his kids loved it, and how much he loved playing that part, and how he hoped one day to go back to it. And I suppose he did in the end, at the end of Peter Capaldi's thing, which is terrific too. But he said there aren't many parts you can. Yeah, I remember him saying this. He said almost every other part you play, you're trying to find a way of being as real as possible. And he said you still have to do that in Doctor Who, but you can be so much bigger than that, and it's and he said finding that balance is absolute joy. And I just thought that was a really nice conversation. Then, being, as much as I would have let him go in front of me, two things. One is I didn't know if he needed a shit, and secondly, I was busting for a wee, so I went and left him in the queue. So
No one would blame you. That's all
anyway,
right.
I came out and I said, if there's any smell in there, it was Jeremy Clarkson's.
Outstanding, man. That's great. No, he's he was an amazing master and will stand out because of it. He would have been a great Doctor Who as well, though.
Actually, I think he would have been. Yeah, I think it'd been terrific. I'm sure he must have been on the list. There was loads of people I know being considered. Oddly enough, I know that I know Russell's first choice for the role was David Tennant.
Prior to Eccleston.
Well, that was the thing. Is there's Russell had was writing Doctor Who, and he'd just written Casanova, and he wanted David Tennant. I think Tennant might have already been shooting Casanova at the time. And he said, "Look, he's brilliant. How can we get him for Doctor Who?" And the BBC was saying, "Well, we'd rather have these guys because these guys are bigger names, of people like Alan Davies, and a couple of others that the BBC were pushing because they were their big male actors for their shows at the time. Jonathan, whatever it was called, Jonathan Creek, that Alan Davies was in, was a big BBC drama. So,
sure.
But then it was Eccleston that said that came to Russell because they'd done Second Coming together for ITV.
Amazing, yes.
Yeah. So Russell said the surprise was getting the email from Eccleston saying, "Look, would you consider me?" And the minute that happened, everyone's like, now it's serious. Okay, because an actor like Eccleston is saying, "I want to do this role," that suddenly elevated the possibility of what everything could be. It was just suddenly everybody's taking it seriously, and I love that. But David Tennant got there in the end, because when Chris left after season 1, Russell was then able to say, "Well, I want David," because they'd done Casanova, it'd come out. Yeah. Tennant was the next big thing. It was terrific. But it's interesting that he had him in mind from the beginning. But I can't imagine John Sim wasn't considered, because I just think I think he'd have been a terrific Doctor.
Absolutely, man. No, I so agree. Are you a fan of the Big Finish audio dramas?
Do you know, I keep thinking I ought to try those. I don't know what it is about it, because I love the fact they've got all the original actors to play these parts, including Tom Baker as now the curator as well. I just think the stories sound terrific. But when I work, I listen to audiobooks, and having that one narrator read the book seems fine. But listening to a play while I'm working, I find it too distracting. I find I'm pulled out of what I'm doing. The one voice seems to work, but the imagination that is involved in trying to visualize a TV show or a movie version of what I'm listening to, because it's in a book it's been described, isn't it? This guy goes off, says that he does this, and he thinks that. Whereas in a play, you're getting noises, sound effects, and dialogue, and you're required to imagine it. And if I'm doing that, then it's hard to imagine what I'm drawing.
Oh, I can appreciate that while you're working. Absolutely. As a little kid, I was exposed to vintage radio from America, from the 30s through the 50s, and really became a massive fan of it. And once I learned that the BBC still produces audio drama and streams it regularly, I'm a big BBC Radio 4 Extra fan. I'm constantly there to see what they're playing. And I really felt that I think the Big Finish stuff, I really want to talk to Nicholas Briggs, and I've made overtures to get him on Word Balloon, and I'm gonna have to reestablish that. Especially they've got a big crossover for this year that's coming out later.
Right.
So a lot of
it ties in, from what I understand. I think there's some kind of tangential tie-in to the new stuff as well.
Oh, that's great to hear.
I don't quote me on that one, because I don't know for sure, but it's like one of those things you hear on the grapevine. But
sure. But who has a great redemption with the audios? Well, two guys, Paul McGann and Colin Baker.
Yeah.
And their stories are great. And Colin Baker, my God, I mean, I really went from, I don't know if I like this guy, and he wasn't served well by Good Stories for the network BBC treatment of the show in general. but man, he is great. They did a Davros with Colin Baker, and it's funny and good and well written, and both characters are so well represented. It's like, man, good for Colin Baker. I'm so glad. And Tom Baker, I mean, my God, has had this marvelous career and still has that amazing voice.
Oh, yeah.
And that's so great that being in his 80s and still, God, that little bit of business he does with Matt Smith when what happened to Gallifrey? Lost. Shh. And just that immediate reflex. It's like, yeah, there he is. There's the guy. Absolutely.
I
man.
know. I just that just brought tears to my eyes. That whole scene, it's just like, and I remember when we watched it, I emailed Russell. I said, "Have you seen this?" And he said, "I know that voice." It's like the minute that voice comes out, it's like, yes, I really believe you might. It's just
yes, exactly. And yeah, John Coleshaw. I love his Tom Baker impression.
Oh God, isn't that incredible?
To a T. I mean, my God,
there was a trailer for a Big Finish thing, and it was because there's John Coleshaw as another guy who does a perfect David Tennant and Matt Smith, and they redid that entire scene together. They even dressed the set, so they did that entire scene together as the doctors and the doctor and the curator. It was brilliant. If you close your eyes, you cannot tell the difference. It's extraordinary. But the Big Finish guys did this trailer recently, and I thought, how the fuck did they get all of those people back to do that? And it was those two guys doing impersonations of all the doctors.
Wow.
It was amazing. You couldn't tell the difference.
Pertwee and Troughton are well represented with the people that imitate them.
Yeah.
I really have tremendous respect. Hell, I'm as I believe you are as well, massive Prisoner fan, Patrick McGowan. And it's not perfect, but they did a couple original stories along with taking some of the best episodes of McGowan's story and representing them in audio and even tying them together even more so with some added scenes. I really like it. I really like Big Finish's version of The Prisoner. I think it's quite good.
The nice thing about people like John Coleshaw is that it's not just that he can impersonate a character by repeating lines they've already said. He can talk conversationally. I don't know if you ever saw the one he did where he did a conversation with Patrick Moore. Did you see the two Patrick Moores?
No, but I've seen him interview Tom Baker. That was incredible.
Oh yeah, it was the same. It was the same thing. He did this thing where he would impersonate these people he was interviewing as the character he was. So it was the person interviewing the same person.
Sure.
Patrick Moore was this eccentric presenter of The Sky at Night for decades on the BBC, which is an astronomy program, 20 minutes long once a month. It's a terrific series anyway, but he was the most bizarre personality. You have to see him to believe him. Honestly, he was cricket mad, astronomy mad. He was the epitome of the bizarre British eccentric from a bygone age. Monocle. He wore a monocle as well.
Wow.
He had this very animated way of speaking. Hello, this is Patrick Moore and The Sky of Night. This kind of thing. That and John Coleshaw does him perfectly. And so he did this interview as Patrick Moore interviewing Patrick Moore. It's absolutely hilarious because they both start talking about, and Patrick Moore goes off on these tangents about cricket, and John Coleshaw is able to keep up with him. It becomes completely nonsensical about cricket rules, but just the fact that Coleshaw never drops character. You don't get that with a lot of impersonators.
Yeah, I'm a big Coleshaw fan, big Rob Brydon fan.
Right.
In fact, the Trip movies with Brydon.
Oh yeah, I love those.
And that's how I learned my bloody Michael Caine.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Yeah.
And I love when they do Alfred Michael Caine. I've buried Batman. I've buried too many Batmen. I don't want to do Master.
It's because he's got that slightly nasally vortex because he's an old man. So my wife, so Michael Caine lived round here for a long while. He's still got a house around here, but he's
wow.
I think his daughter lives in it now. He lives in Spain, I think.
Okay.
But years ago, when I first met wife, she was working in a local bookshop part-time, and I remember they were building a new hotel next door to the bookshop, and we walked in on a Sunday for her to open the shop, for whatever reason, the digger had knocked through the wall of the soon-to-be hotel into the bookshop, and so we walked in, and the wall of the bookshop had been caved in. And we're standing there looking at it, and behind us, this voice says, "My God." we look around, it's Michael Caine. And I said, you know, they were only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. And he said, that's very good.
That's awesome. Wow.
How many chances do you get to do that in your life?
Oh, a longtime fan of Michael Caine. I mean, my God, everything. That's great. I always say Harry Brown. People may not have in the States may not have seen Harry Brown, but that is such a great revenge movie and so dark. And it's like every now and then Caine gets to go back and do something really, really interesting. I mean, he's great in everything, even that horrible Going in Style remake that it's like, you people, you had such great actors to do this movie. And I love the original with Art Carney and Lee Strasberg and George Burns. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And it was such shit. And it's like, but he had his bloody granddaughter and he was certainly kind to her. And that's all right. But, you know,
did I ever tell you that I may, in fact, have been responsible for Michael Caine being in Batman?
Tell me.
Okay. So
awesome.
Mark and I are on the Ultimates, and Mark and I are having one of our conversations, and he said, I've been talking to David Goyer, and, you know, they're doing that new Batman film. And I said, oh, that's cool. He said, you know, they're shooting it in, Christopher Nolan's doing it, they're going to shoot it in England. He said it's really interesting. They've got Christian Bale, you know, through fan reaction saying, you know, that here's the guy that should do it. Anyway, he said, and they've got Anthony Hopkins is going to be Alfred. And I was like, no. Said, no, it's got to be Michael Caine. It's like, don't be ridiculous. You can't have Michael Caine as Alfred. I said, yeah, you can, because he's Alfie, is the French connection. You know, that's the guy who's got the history that makes him. And it's like, nah, I'm going to tell Goya. Anyway, so next thing I hear is like 2 weeks later, Michael Caine's cousin. I thought, hang on.
That's awesome.
That can't be a coincidence, right?
Outstanding. You know, Mitch Halleck, who runs Terrificon. God, we gotta figure out a way, if you'd be interested, Hitch, to get you to that show, because it's a lot of fun. It's on the East Coast. But he had Robert Wool at his show, and they were still planning the big television crisis crossover that they ended up doing. And Mitch is like, you know, you should be in that and play Knox again, the reporter. And Mark Guggenheim, who was one of the principal writer producers in the Arrowverse and was handling the show running, Mitch goes, hey, he's 2 rows away from you. Get Robert Wool to be in the crisis crossover. And that's how it happened. And Mark was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. My God. So yeah, man, no, it's stranger things have happened. I think that's wonderful. Too much. To wrap up, Hitch, I want to know about your run on Venom. And are you, you know, so are you, obviously you can't, I'm assuming you can't juggle both books. You're done.
Oh yeah, issue 16 was my last one.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I think I'd got to the point where I was going to need a break anyway, because there was a bit of a snafu. It happened quite a lot on Venom, unfortunately, but with schedules. And when I was just coming to the end of penciling issue 13, the editor said, you know, we're going to need to get several people to ink this issue. I was like, well, why? He said, well, because we're double shipping with issue 12. I was like, oh, in the fuck, like, you know, who told me that? When was that ever on my schedule? Oh, you know, it was decided, and and you know, and it wasn't the first time that happened on Venom. So I ended up there are kind of behind the scenes stories to tell about this one, but I won't do it in public because it, you know, it's not pleasant. But I ended up inking and mostly penciling 13 pages of issue 16 in about 3 days.
Jesus. Yeah,
it was brutal. But it was either that or they went to multiple people to do. And I just didn't want that. So I was really burnt by the end of that issue. And actually, I think I'd run my course on it. I liked the book a lot, but I'd heard less and less from Alan Ram. And even actually by the time, you know, I'd done 16 issues every single month, regardless of how big the issues got, because issue 1 was double sized.
Okay.
And no matter when scripts came in, and it was a bit sporadic, especially in the first year. And I hit every date. I never missed shipping. Sometimes I ended up inking half an issue because the schedule was such that by the time I finished penciling it, Andrew had a week to ink an issue. And rather than split it up, I did it without telling anybody and just let Andrew take the credit. And none of that was Andrew's fault. It was just the schedule was bananas constantly. But at the end of it, I finish issue 16, and then I hear from anybody. I'm still doing covers for Devon, so I'm still hearing from the editors, but I don't even get a thank you from the writers. You've done 16 issues, not even a goodbye, thank you, single email, not a line. You think, well, nobody gives a fuck.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's not your fault.
Well, I'm just sympathizing, but also double shipping and both companies really burnt out so many people. And it's like, when are you guys going to get out of the groove and sniff the air and realize you're burning people out, man? I mean, I'm convinced that's why Brubaker left.
It did me on Justice League. I'd done the JLA stuff, and I got the chance to write Justice League, and I was in at the deep end without any planning, and I ended up having to write and draw the Rebirth issue, write 3 first issues for 3 different story arcs I hadn't even plotted for, because the double shipping and the multiple artists and everybody was slow anyway. Just like I just didn't have the experience to cope with that. Monthly writing 1 book a month, planning properly, maybe writing and drawing 1 book a month at that point, maybe. But doing that, I just was not equipped to deal with that situation, with the lack of experience I had.
Well, currently the only guy I can think of that can handle that is Dan Mora,
or Charles Soule, maybe.
Well, certainly a writing standpoint, and Brian Bendis also, had multiple books.
Oh yeah, Dan Mora, that is ludicrously.
But from an art standpoint, my God, I know he's doing both, World's Finest and Shazam right now.
I know Wade said that. He said, you will not believe. He said, I write this script, and then suddenly a week later, the pencils and inks come in. He said, I do not know how he does this. It's just like seemingly impossible. I know that there are genuinely few fast people in the industry, but fast and good. Johnny, obviously Dan.
Johnny Romita, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, Johnny's Johnny, no matter how fast he works. If I remember when I was on Ultimates and he was doing Thor and Spider-Man at the same time. Loved that Thor run. Absolutely.
Oh God, yeah.
God, if there was a man should have drawn a Thor forever, it was Johnny. He just
agreed.
Yeah. But I remember Ralph Macchio, who's the editor, he was saying, he said, well, Johnny would spend like 3.5 weeks or something on Thor, and then he'd do Spider-Man over a weekend, and it's like it doesn't look any different. It's the same.
No, truly, artists like that are rare, and it is great. Mentioning Johnny, any thoughts on Senior's passing? John Senior's passing.
Yeah, I thought about writing some of that stuff on Twitter, but I always find it a little insincere, honestly. But yeah, John Romita was genuinely one of the last greats left. When you think about all the people who founded the industry in the way we understand it, Stan Lee's gone, Kirby's gone,
Ditko,
Kubert. And I suppose it's inevitable, but especially because John was in his 90s. But I met him a few times. I met him first when I was 19, so I was on She-Hulk, and Marvel brought me out in the summer of '89 to New York, which was a terrifying experience for this kid who'd grown up, young autistic kid growing up on the north of England. He'd never even been to London at that point. Anyway. So Bobby said I was going to start drawing covers for the book, and we'd had some fill-in issues, but an artist whose name escapes me. But I know that Romita and his chaps and Romita's Raiders, had redrawn a number of pages for this guy because he wasn't doing establishing shots, he wasn't doing Marvel storytelling, basically. And the one thing I knew I could do was storytelling. I thought my drawing was a bit shit, but I could do the storytelling. Anyway, so I was supposed to start taking over the covers on the book at that point, because I'd been trusted a bit more. So they said, you can start doing the covers now. So Bobby said, we'll get John in here to talk to you in a minute, and he'll talk to you about how the Marvel covers would go and what's involved and the process. Anyway, so I'm in Bobby's office. John walks in. Well, he doesn't walk in. He blows in like a typhoon is what happens. Anyway, and then he looks at me. He goes, "Is this him?" And I stand up and I say, "It's a great pleasure to." What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh, I'm sorry. What? You don't like doing comics to Marvel? Wait, what? I said, you can't tell a story for shit, man. You know, you don't like doing establishment. And then Bobby's like, John, what? That's not him. He just wants to do the covers. Oh, okay. Come to my office. And then we had a whole afternoon in his office. He was the sweetest man alive suddenly. And he talked me through I learned more in that afternoon, I think, that I'd learned in years previously. He was just, and I was there for a week. So he was just like, whenever you want, just come in, we'll talk, talk about comics, we'll talk about storytelling, covers, whatever you like. It was just wonderful. It was really great. And the next time I met him actually was in the offices of CrossGen in the year 2000 when I was out for Orlando Con. And he was out too, and he was having a tour of the offices. And I was sitting talking to Ron Mars. And he came over and said, "I don't know if you remember me." And I was like, he said, the Marvel offices said, "I've followed your work since then. You've just become a real, and I was like, he said some really lovely things. I'm like, well, fuck, my day's made, I just, so there was little occasions we saw each other at cross paths after that, but just that instant, that one thing when I was 19, there's that change from being somebody he had up against the wall by the lapels to being, come into my office, we'll have wine, we'll have nipples, you can marry my daughter,
That's terrific, man. Very, very cool.
So that's my one John Romita story anyway.
That's a damn good one, man. Don't kid yourself. Hitch, we can wrap. I can't think of anything else because I imagine whatever's coming down the road is stuff you still can't talk about.
I can't. But trust me, you'll want to talk to me in the autumn.
Hitch, I enjoy these conversations. I'm so glad we've gotten to know each other these last couple of years, and it really means
great.
Truly, man. And I feel the same way, and it really means a lot that you come back to Word Balloon. And no, man, what are you talking about? We're gonna have to talk about not only the Strange New Worlds whole season, but Secret Invasion, I'm sure. And I imagine, Christ, even Indiana Jones, I imagine we might want to talk about.
You'll trust me, you really want to know what's in the autumn.
Fair enough, man. When the announcement is made, expect the bat signal to pop up, and I'll expect you to come meet me on the rooftop. That'll be great.
We will do that.
Thanks as always. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, John. Always.
Terrificon is back with more guests, more surprises, and more fun at Connecticut's best hotel and convention centre, Mohegan Sun. Are you looking for an immersive entertainment experience for the entire family? Terrificon is the #1 comic book convention for fans. Come and celebrate your passion for comics and their creators with your favourite actors from superhero, sci-fi, horror shows and films. Terrificon is the best venue for purchasing comic books, artwork, pop culture memorabilia and gaming goods. Terrificon is 3 full days of people from all over the world coming together to celebrate fandom and the creators that make it all possible. Join us for the adventure of a lifetime. And don't forget about our annual cosplay contest, trivia, panels and live entertainment. There are a lot of Comic-Cons out there, but there is only one terrific Comic-Con, Terrificon.